Hello, everybody. I'm Peter Grant with Zaner Metals in Denver. Welcome to This Week in Metals. I'm with Peter Thomas, as I always am. How are you in Chicago, sir?
We're all good. We're not getting as much air pollution as you are from the California fires. It must be awful out there.
It's pretty thick here, and we have fires, multiple fires burning here in Colorado as
Huh.
well. That adding to it makes for beautiful sunsets, but I can do without the poor air quality.
Yeah, this is awful. This is
Yeah.
just awful. These new policies of not cutting back brush and cutting down old growth is just destroying the air quality, burning up our woods. I mean, these politicians got to go back to the old ways. It worked.
Right. And, look what those policies have done to lumber prices lately.
Yeah, you're right. Very well put. I mean, the American Indians used to back burn the woods because they knew. I mean, that's going back a ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a sound policy that's been around for a while, but
while,
we're
yeah.
getting off the track here.
Oh, we are.
Let's
Let's jump right into
This
gold.
is not this week
It's
in
been
lumber.
yeah, it's been a very slow week in gold. So give us some numbers on that, Pete.
Yeah, I was bored watching the gold market this week,
Yeah,
and silver as well. Gold was only up 0.4% last week.
right.
And while it was the second higher consecutive close, we're still locked well within the range that has been going on for five weeks now.
Yeah,
Um,
but
so
as we've been telling our viewers, if consolidation occurs above 1900, it's not a bad thing. We'd
no, I
love to see
agree.
it go sideways here.
Yeah, I agree. And so I think that just sort of based on inflows and outflows of ETFs and so forth, that
Sure,
investors tend to lose interest in a consolidating market,
that's true.
and
Yeah,
so they reallocate and stuff, and that's what kind of keeps us in the range here. But I remain optimistic, and just because, as we've talked in recent weeks, we have been pretty consistently saying that if Chinese and Indian buyers come back to the
yes,
market, that that's going to be the catalyst for the next leg higher. And we've mentioned some evidence that that's happening in recent weeks, and we got some more this week. Swiss exports to China were up 13.5% in August.
and India's number was even bigger, correct?
In India, Swiss exports to India were up 35%.
Yeah, I mean
So
that's a giant number. And the gold meeting, both the CEOs and execs of Barrick and Newmont, which are the two biggest producers, had some very rosy picture for coming into the end of this year. So
mm,
we're seeing a lot of consolidation and strength and positive numbers from a lot of places that we need to get it from to hold it at this 1900.
right, right. And my kind of thought here is my sense is that those big numbers are reflective probably of jewelers restocking in India, particularly ahead of the wedding season, and as the crops roll in from monsoon and stuff. And we talked about
Right,
that last week, or maybe it was
we
the week
did.
before. But it looks like it's going to be a pretty good harvest in India, and that's going to incent, I think, a lot of rural Indians to bolster their gold holdings, and so the jewelers are restocking in anticipation of that, I think. Um, but as we've mentioned also, Indian buyers are very price sensitive.
Oh
They're
yeah, absolutely. Which is
smart,
why we've
and
seen more sales of silver in India than we
yeah,
have of gold recently. Exactly
yeah.
right.
So they may be looking for a price pullback that they can buy on. They may be holding their cards
Yeah.
at this point, waiting for a pullback. I think if they see anything with an 1800 handle, they jump on it. So I think the downside is pretty well protected at this point. Does that make sense at all to you?
It makes sense, and not only that, they can only hold back for so long, and then they're into the wedding season, and they have to start their gifting, and then they're really going to be in trouble, and you're going to see a stampede in India, and people forget that was the number two market for many decades. So they come in strong. We're going to see a lot of gold movement.
They were the number one market for decades and decades.
back and forth.
in term of consumption, yeah, but
Yeah, yeah,
before
and
China
jewelry
kind of,
for sure,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So I remain encouraged on gold on the upside,
Good.
even though it's been pretty dull. Um, Trading of late. As I mentioned, silver was kind of in the same boat,
Yeah,
still very much range bound. Silver was up 0.16% last week.
but
Um,
I mean, it's pretty unusual when you think about it. Back when we were just avidly telling people to buy gold at 16 and 18. Now people are like getting its ho hum at 27. I mean, seriously, folks, this has been a big run.
yeah. So last week's higher close, albeit minuscule, was
Yes.
the first higher in 3 weeks. So I'm not terribly impressed by that, but maybe that bodes well for a better week this week. I like the way the silver market closed on Friday, and
I did too,
yeah,
and you know what? It's the first full week next week, and we're coming into a fall trading season. A lot of equity around there in the stock market that we've been seeing coming into the metals. Hopefully, to continue, and let's hope that silver makes the
yeah.
jump here.
So interesting thing happened. We've talked about uh, the current political environment ahead of the U.S. elections being, so incredibly contentious, and perhaps incenting safe haven buyers
Yes,
to move funds into gold and silver, particularly as a haven. Uh, well, the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I think, is going to amplify this tenfold.
that's
Um,
I when I saw that she had passed away last night. I was very interested to see if there were going to be repercussions. It'd be interesting to see if it will, in effect, push our market up, and see a little more demand.
yeah,
I would not be surprised because if someone is put forward, it could get real ugly like it did the last time.
yeah. I found it interesting that on the radio this morning, I heard or I was reminded that when she was a nominee back in the 90s, she was, and obviously a very liberal uh, judge or nominee at the time coming out of the ACLU, and
Right.
yet the she was confirmed 97-3 in the Senate.
Yeah. Well,
So
she was deeply respected for her legal prowess.
Oh,
There's no
absolutely.
question
She was
about it.
brilliant. She was
Yeah,
absolutely brilliant, and why I perhaps didn't agree, on a lot of issues with her. Um, Much respect
yeah,
for her jurisprudence, and I think she'll be missed, on the court. She was very good friends with Anton Scalia.
yeah. I knew that.
So,
I knew that.
um,
Yeah, they were this kind of opposite of
yeah,
attract, I guess. So
yeah.
listen, tell me about the PGMs. Let's cover those real quick,
Yeah, so it was an interesting week, somewhat in the PGMs, um, at
which
least
is
in
platinum and
palladium.
palladium, right?
Yeah. So let's touch on platinum first. So
Sure.
platinum was up $1.50 on the week. So
I mean,
again,
yeah,
virtually
that was your
unchanged.
yawner. Okay.
You know,
And
it did.
palladium was our interesting market, and and
Yeah.
and continues to be, Pete,
Yeah,
right?
I would just say that platinum did make a test of the upside. It got as high as 985, but faded. Um, and so it sort of broke out of the consolidation, the triangle pattern, but couldn't sustain those gains. So
Right.
again, closing unchanged, back within the range. I still find myself sort of leaning to the upside, but was kind of disappointed in the price performance in platinum. But as you said, palladium was
Yeah,
interesting. A fifth consecutive higher weekly
that was
close.
it.
It
Yep.
closed up 1.7% last week, set a new 5-month high at
Yes, it did.
24.2550. That sort of confirmed the 61.8% retracement of that huge decline that we saw earlier in the year from 28.7550 to all the way down to 14.9550.
Right.
Um, so I remain encouraged, and while it didn't like sustain those gains, into Friday's close last week, I think from a technical perspective, the next Fibonacci level that I'd be looking at would be 2580 in
Well,
Palladium.
I think what's going to drive it from a non-technical standpoint is if China continues with its green initiative now that their economy is coming back in spades. If we see consumption for them to cut down their air pollution, they were making a good push before the virus escaped from there. And hopefully we will see them continue and we'll see good consumption. But according to our friends at Heraeus, they're still having big blackouts and there's nothing going on to improve the electrical supply to the mines. So we're going to see more upside pressure, Pete.
Yeah, I think that's true from the supply side, certainly, but also on the demand side, as you mentioned,
Right.
improvement in the Chinese economy.
Yeah.
August retail sales were up 0.5% from a year ago.
Which is
So
bizarre.
that says a lot that
Yeah.
that Chinese retail sales post COVID are now higher than Chinese retail sales pre-COVID in August of last
Right.
year. So they seem to be coming back very strongly.
Yes,
I
sir.
think that bodes well for demand of just about everything, durables
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
and
I mean,
everything.
we saw a staggering week in not only in the precious metals, but in base metals as well. So I mean, there
Yeah,
was
we'll get to
good
that in
demand
one
in both.
sec.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
so
which brings us right around to copper, I think, Pete.
yeah, but I also wanted to mention that the OECD believes that China is going to be the only G20
Yes,
country
yeah,
with a positive growth number for
I know.
this year.
A
Um,
positive GDP in China, everybody else went under. Gee, what a shock, right?
yeah, and again,
I
we
was amazed when
always
I saw that.
I always couch my the Chinese data, but this is coming from the OECD.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess I wouldn't be shocked by that. But again, the second biggest economy in the world seems to be coming back and coming back pretty strongly. And
Their
I think it was
consumption of copper speaks to that, and we did have a yearly high, did we not? 2 year high,
um,
as a matter of fact.
yeah, it was copper closed up 2.1% last week,
Right?
closed above the 310 level,
Which, gee,
close
I
at
wonder who was talking about that.
yeah, we you, my friend,
Yeah. And
deemed
so now
as
that we're
308,
above the
309
310,
is a pretty
not
significant
that
level.
we would recommend trades, but we wouldn't recommend shorting a breakout if we were recommending trading, right?
Yeah, we've talked about this in the past. That kind of the next technical level to be watching is kind of 330,
That's the
333.
number.
So,
Yep.
um, solid close in copper above 310. Market looks
Well,
pretty darn good.
we've been talking about 330 since it was at 208. So we haven't been doing too bad in the copper market.
There you go. U.S. data last week were sort of a mixed bag. Some of it was great. The Empire State Index came in at 17 on expectations of 5.6 versus 3.7 in July. Little disappointed in industrial production, 0.4% on expectations of plus 1%.
Well,
Um,
IP really hasn't really gotten hammered. I kind of expected it. It's what was overdue. We had that surge, so now
yeah,
we're getting a little setback. That's all.
yeah, I think
Everybody
it's just
locked in their home has been buying a lot of stuff.
yeah, I think you're right. I think it's just a slowing from that
Yep.
kind of initial rebound from COVID. Similar to retail sales, retail sales came in at 0.6%, again on expectations of 1%. So again, a slowing, missed expectations.
Right.
Um, but the precious metals, held in there during all of that. A little bit hotter inflation again. We had talked about PPI and
Yeah.
CPI
Yeah.
previously. Import-export prices came in a little bit hotter than expected as well. So we're starting to see that. Um, we know that that the Fed is inclined to let inflation run above target if they can get it there. Um, what was interesting last week is that there was no the Fed seemed to be kind of purposefully vague on further accommodations.
Well, I mean, I think they're going to hold that 2% number by hook or by crook. I don't think they're going to let that get away.
I
So
don't know that they can even get it there, to be honest with you, but we'll
I'll tell
see.
you what, we'll see. If the economy picks up and we start to see some repayment of debt, there's no way it's going to inflate.
Yeah.
It just won't. I mean, economics 101 says no borrowing, no rate increase. I mean, that's just how it is, right?
How can you not borrow at these rates? Come
Yeah.
on.
No,
Uh,
you're not getting an argument at
leverage up.
22%, right?
Leverage up. So the BOJ and the BOE also announced policy last week. As expected, they held steady as well. But the market seemed to at least initially be kind of um, disappointed that the Fed wasn't a little bit more aggressive in at least pushing that inflation agenda. And so we saw a little bit of pressure, after that, but
Yeah.
market kind of came back when all was said and done. I think there also might be a little, the Fed might be, holding the cards close to the vest to maybe put a little pressure on Congress to come up with the next round of fiscal stimulus. And maybe that's in the works,
All
but they,
right.
they they don't seem to be able to come to any conclusion in Congress. But
So,
they haven't been able to do
what's our
anything.
expectations for next week?
Yeah, so next week we'll see Chicago and Richmond Fed indices.
Right.
We've got flash PMIs out next week. Home prices and new home sales.
Home prices is going to be very interesting to
Yeah,
see. If they keep going up, it's going to be very interesting.
right. 893,000 is the new home sales
Okay.
expectations. We've got durable goods orders
Uh,
out next week. Expectations are 1.5%.
it's not a bad
Um,
number.
Not a bad number, but
Uh,
the previous month was a plus 11.4%. That's a tough
yeah,
act to
but
follow.
we just talked
But
about a setback,
yeah,
and by the way, it's a positive number, so at
yeah,
least people are working, right?
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
so all that being said, I think the precious metals remain in a pretty favorable position, broadly speaking.
Right.
Copper, as we've mentioned, looks really good.
Yep.
Palladium may have seen the breakout that we're seeing
We
further
were expecting.
retracement within the range. So
Right.
that's kind of what we'll be looking for this week
All
in
right,
metals.
and I think that this week could be very interesting. If we continue to see these wedges pop to the upside. If not, we're going to get consolidation. We don't want you guys to get bored with a market that's consolidating. All that means is it's building a base and it has the potential to go higher.
Exactly,
Yep.
exactly. And with that,
Yes,
I think
sir.
we wrap this up.
I
I'm
agree.
I'm Peter Grant in Denver for Zaner Metals.
Pete Thomas in Chicago. Thank you for viewing. Give us a like and be sure to follow so you can get this in your mailbox every week. We also can provide you with some precious metals if you're looking. Pete, would you give them that at the end of the show and so they could dial in and
It's
check out
always up
whatever they
there.
need?
ZanerPreciousMetals.com.
Perfect.